More medications, less health. Something's broken. Traditional medicine manages symptoms, but true healing addresses root cause. I'm Josh Rimany, pharmacist turned healer. At Beyond the Pills, we merge ancient wisdom with modern-day science to inspire you through stories of transformation, practical trainings, and holistic healing. Join me and other practitioners as we guide you towards vibrant health, body, mind, and spirit, and move beyond symptom management into true healing. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Beyond the Pills. I'm Josh Rimany, pharmacist turned healer. And today I am honored to welcome Jim Paoletti to the podcast. Jim is a pharmacist, educator, and industry leader in hormone optimization and functional wellness. Many of you may already know him from his extensive work in bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, or what we call BHRT, compounding and clinical education. Early in my career, his book, A Practitioner's Guide to Physiologic Bioidentical Hormone Balance, was a game changer for me as I transitioned into the functional and wellness-based practices. With decades of experience, Jim has been instrumental in training healthcare professionals on how to integrate hormone health into patient care. I'm excited to dive into his insights and wisdom today. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you for that great introduction like that. I'm thrilled to be here. I love what you're doing, and I feel honored to be part of it.
Well, it was all in divine timing and interesting spaces, because I kind of reconnected with you on LinkedIn, and I was like, oh my gosh, like one of the guys that I learned the right way to do hormone balancing when I was getting into functional medicine and just getting into compounding. This is, we're going on 17 years ago for me. It was just such an honor to have a connection call with you and be like, all right, let's go full circle with this. So let's talk a little bit about, what led you into the world of bioidentical hormone replacement and this kind of what I would call this wellness-based pharmacy practice.
Well, I started my career as a regular behind-the-counter pharmacist, counting pills, and but I was in a area close to a doctor that worked with Jonathan Wright, and so he sent me some literature and telling me how bad Premarin is for women, and that we should be using these natural hormones, and so that was the early 1980s. So I got into this very early, and the more I read, the more I realized what I'm doing is wrong. This isn't right for women. They can do better. So that got me interested in it. So I started reading. I contacted Dr. Jonathan Wright and said, I need more information. And he hooked me up with a doctor right there in Yellow Springs, Ohio, I think it was. And I just started educating myself. And it just went from there.
Right? It turned into this whole career of where you've been teaching compounding pharmacists how to do bioidenticals right, how to even prescribe them in ways and recommend doses and doing it right. And your book, The Practitioner's Guide to Physiologic Bioidentical Hormone Balance, really has been a game changer. What inspired you to write it, and how has your thinking evolved since the publication?
Well, I worked for professional compounding centers, and I did some traveling and lecturing for them. And then I worked for a laboratory, and I did some traveling and lecturing for them. And I was single at the time, and for about 2 years there, I was doing so much traveling, I put like 150,000 air miles on 2 years in a row, and I really was getting burned out on it. I mean, I love educating. There isn't anything I enjoy more than an audience that appreciates that I can teach them something that's going to help their patients or help themselves. So it was great what I was doing, but you can't do that much travel and not lose your mind eventually. I actually spent 2 years in a row more nights in a Marriott bed than my own home bed. So I decided, let's write a book. And I could reach more people that way. And that was my goal. I've been blessed to gain all this knowledge and be taught by some great practitioners. It's my responsibility now to educate as many people as I can on bioidentical hormones and how to do them on a physiological basis.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think just for the listeners, we've got practitioners, we've got clients and patients that are hormones are a big thing, anti-aging and moving this forward. And I think when I got your book, so your book was recommended to me when I was going through my own training, because as I was moving into compounding, I started to understand that there's these things called hormones, and they're called bioidentical, and we can make them. And I was like, I want to know more on how I can do this the right way. How can I learn about this, but also not only make it, but learn about it. And so somebody, I can't remember who it was. It was one of my teachers when I was going through the training of how to compound. I was like, I need to learn more about this, because and the book you wrote was for practitioners, but I want you to talk to them about this thing called physiological bioidentical hormone balance, the physiological space, because what I've always done is talk to people about hormone restoration, getting to physiological doses. And when I hear that, because even in this world of functional health and wellness and anti-aging, I've been seeing so much around the process of overshooting the hormones and getting supra physiological. And so I want you to talk. I got to talk to you about this, because you're the OG that taught me how it's really, really important to move patients down this physiological pathway. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about how your experience in that.
Well, I really like, first of all, the fact that you use the word restoration therapy. Everybody else calls it hormone replacement therapy. I'm going we are restoring the levels to what they used to be with the same hormone that the person used to make. So I like that restoration therapy, which is what I call it too. But the point is this: if we're going to put a hormone back in somebody's body, what our target is what was the level of that hormone when it was working optimally? Say a woman or a man at age 25. Okay. That's usually my target range. So what we do is we take the average person, what was their level, and that's your target. There's no literature, no scientific or physiological reason that I know of that says that person will ever need more hormone than they made on their own. So that's physiological, based on what the human body produces. For example, a woman on the average makes 20 to 30 milligrams a day during the luteal phase. Now, the amount of progesterone you give somebody is going to vary according to the dosage route, but you want it based on that. So if you're using a topical progesterone, which has very efficient delivery, what's your range? 20, 30 milligrams. I see people out there giving 50, 100 milligrams topical progesterone. It's super physiological. There are problems with super physiological. I won't get into all the science of it, but some of the effects of the hormone actually reverse, like estrogen's cardiovascular protection. If you're low on estrogen, you're deficient, you have lower protection. You increase the estrogen up toward physiological, that protection goes up. But you hit that apex at the physiological level, and you keep going, cardiovascular protection goes back down. There are a number of things, like all three of the hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, are neuroprotective. If you go too high on any of them past physiological, they become, estrogen, progesterone lose that property. They're no longer neuroprotective. And testosterone has been shown to actually become neurotoxic at high levels. So these guys are out there on huge doses of testosterone. I worry about that. I really worry about that, because the average male produces 5 to 6 milligrams of testosterone a day. Clinically, that might take in a topical application up to 10, 20 milligrams to get a corresponding level, because of the way they handle testosterone. But I see guys out there, and I'm sure you do, 50, 100, 200 milligrams topical testosterone. we don't even know what the risk long-term of super physiological levels are. Nobody studied that. But I go down to the basic common sense based on physiology and say, why would a guy need more testosterone than he made at age 18? Okay, so that's physiological, based it on the human body. Jonathan Wright used to say, mimic the human body as closely as possible. I've always agreed with that. And so that's what we're doing physiological. We're really mimicking what you used to do, what you used to make. Now, ideally, in an ideal world, it would be cool if we educated enough people to say, you're going to need hormones someday. You're going to need, even if you don't have hot flashes, you need to protect your heart, your bones, your muscle, all these protective benefits that the hormones provide. Would it be really cool if we get people to, when they're age 20, 25, somewhere in there, do your levels. Get your numbers. In fact, I had my daughter when she was back in college. Part of the agreement for me to pay her college, I said, you have to spit for me, collect your saliva twice over the next 2 years. And she actually did it 3 times over like 5 years, back when she was cycling or anything else. When she needs hormones, I don't even have to look at an average. I got a target, an exact target for her. And I thought, man, you talk about personalized medicine. If we get people before they get into hormone imbalances, to test their hormones at least once, so we can just go right in and say, this is what we need to recreate for you.
That's brilliant. I hadn't even thought of that. And I have 2 daughters, 8 and 10. So now I have to bookmark that for my daughter.
There you go.
Well, but here's the concept is beautiful, right? And so what you've said is like, well, obviously more is not better. Like men, especially, like we don't need to slather on the testosterone, and we call it super physiological. That means we're putting way more than the physiological body is making. Like you said, like 5, 6, 7 milligrams a day. And we're putting 50, 100 milligrams, and it's getting absorbed and going way over. This is where I think people have this misconception around hormones and fundamentals is they think it's cancer causing and causing all these issues. And so demystifying that around, well, if we restore you to the place where your hormones were at their optimal in the 20s and like early 30s, right? And what a great idea is like, oh, well, let's just baseline you. So when you do need them, and you start to move down with age and all these other things, well, we're restoring you back up to this vibrant space. So that's brilliant. And I love that. So yes. And let's talk a little bit more about the misconceptions, because I think people say if I get hormones, I have a higher incidence of cancer risk. That's a big, huge thing. And I know that you have your opinion on that. And I've read it in your books about the physiological dosing, but talk to people about these cancer risks and other misconceptions. You talked about Premarin, which is a synthetic hormone that's not derived from humans, and how it has these paradoxical effects in the body where they're actually not protective. We thought they were, but then all that stuff came out. So this biological way is putting the hormones that you are already making, and they're derived from plant-based, but they look and act and they're very similar. That's why we call them bioidentical. But I want you to talk a little bit about the cancer risks and what you've seen in your practice over these decades.
I will be happy to do that, but let me first go back and talk about the dosing.
Perfect. Yeah, let's do this.
Why do you think that has happened over time, that people are giving more and more hormones? In my opinion, it's because we did not understand well enough the interactions of hormones. For example, a woman has hot flashes. We keep giving her more estrogen to control her hot flashes, and she's up at a super physiological level, still having problems. Well, she's got high cortisol, it blocks the estrogen from working. Or she has low progesterone, which affects the estrogen receptors. So I think a lot of the problem came from I want patients and practitioners both to understand it's all about the balance. Every hormone and every endocrine hormone affects the function of every other endocrine hormone. If I had one master switch, it'd probably be cortisol, or in younger women and men, insulin. But you have to balance them all. You have to. You can't just go on and fix the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and ignore thyroid function and adrenal function, and they're not going to work right at the doses if there's problems in those other areas. So that's where I think what led people to higher and higher doses. To just try to control the symptoms. Like a guy's not feeling right on his testosterone. We'll give him some more. Well, you know what? It's his thyroid that's the problem, not his testosterone being deficient. So that's just my feeling on that. Anyway, I think
I appreciate that, and I think that thank you for bringing that up. When I've done hormone restoration and talking to patients about hormone balancing and giving them consultations, I tell them that I won't work on their sex hormones before we start looking at things like cortisol, because and looking at that hierarchy, right? And the way I've explained it to people is, well, you have these stress hormones. We know of cortisol, we know of adrenaline, the fight or flight, right? And then we've got the metabolic hormones like thyroid, and then we have the sex hormones, right? It's not categorized. We know we need estrogen and progesterone, and there's estrogen receptors everywhere. But the hierarchy of this hormone cascade is, well, you got to run from the tiger before you can eat, before you can have babies. So the body wants to steal, we used to call it a steal, right? To go to the stress hormones. So I like to help people on the stress response system before I even get them into the hormone balancing, because I say, well, we can't balance you unless this is already in a good place. And that's kind of what I heard you say, but I've said it to my patients in that way.
Yeah, I'm with you on that totally. If you don't look at the adrenals, now I may start people off. I mean, if I've got a menopausal woman that's obviously low on estrogen progesterone, I may start her out on a little bit, but we're going to test your cortisol too.
Right.
Because I got to make a physiological dose work. Okay. And insulin too, especially in younger people. Insulin really affects ovarian production of hormone. So it's the chief disruptor of the endocrine system in my mind in young cycling women.
And we've talked more and more, and we're heading down this path of insulin resistance and obesity and the hot fat and the metabolic fat, all of it cascading into hormonal imbalance, when people don't really associate things like insulin or even, visceral adipose tissue or obesity to a sex hormone or to a perimenopausal problem. Or we don't look at the stress hormones as we're looking at things like estrogen balancing or testosterone balancing. And so I love that you bringing up this hormonal cascade. That it's the way I look at it too. I've always said this is your hormones are like a symphony. And if we just work on one, it's like the trumpet blasting in the symphony. Everything else is out of balance. It's like we have to maintain this beautiful harmonics of the whole body by looking at it all. And this is the premise of functional and integrative health, right? Let's look at the whole picture, not just one little area. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
I call hormone harmony. So we're close on that. But yeah, by the way, you mentioned that the hormones we use are very similar to what the body's produced. They're actually exactly the same. And that's another very important thing for patients to understand. If we took progesterone out of a younger person's body and put it on a microscope slide, and we took progesterone out of your compounding lab, the powder that you use to make your progesterone creams and capsules, put it on a slide, there's not a scientist in the world who can tell you which one came from where. Okay? They match 100%. And I think that makes patients feel a lot more comfortable when they know this is exactly what you used to make. Okay? But
in the day and age of pharmacological perspective, we're not looking at like it looks similar and acts on the receptor the same. It's literally the same molecule, right?
Right.
That's what you're saying, right? So that's what we say when we're saying bioidentical means it's identical. It's not a synthetic form. It's not something that's acting like it. It literally is it, which I think is really important because we need to make sure that we're using these in the appropriate doses, like you said, but also the appropriate dosage forms, and also looking at it from the perspective of it's identical. So thanks for bringing that up and showing it, everybody.
So cancer, that's a subject that more people need education on as far as hormone risk and cancer. I mean, cancer risk and hormones. A lot of the fears that patients have about hormones are what? Increased heart attacks, strokes, and risk of breast cancer, ovarian cancer. Those risks are the whole idea. It started, we were doing hormones incorrectly with it. Totally wrong. We were given estrogen orally, which increased the clotting factors, which increased the heart attacks and stroke. We don't do that anymore. Well, some doctors still do, but not anybody that's knowledgeable enough on this subject. And the cancer risk, we were giving things that were increasing the cancer risk. And for years, doctors balanced estrogen with synthetic progestins, and synthetic progestins are the exact opposite of progesterone as far as cancer risk. Synthetic progestins, every one of them at any dose that's ever been studied, increases the risk. I love over the years how they come out, well, this new lower dose less risk. No, that's not how you say it. What the drug company should be telling the doctors is, yeah, there's still a significant risk. It's lower, but there's still a significant risk. Natural progesterone is anti-proliferative. It increases apoptotic action, which means it's naturally killing cells. So, those are two actions that are anti-cancer. Okay. And progesterone balances estrogen throughout the body, on several levels, from the DNA up to the tissue. Physiological amounts of estrogen and progesterone have been used worldwide for 60 years. Asia and Europe. In those places, there's never been a report or a study showing any increased risk of breast cancer. In fact, there are two large studies. One had 96,000 women in it. I think it was an Italian study. No increase. With the addition of progesterone, it actually, in a couple of studies, showed a small decrease in the risk of breast cancer. So if the hormones are done correctly, we don't have to increase that risk at all. But you have to do two things: bioidentical only, physiological doses. Three things: in balance the whole system. So I wish I'll get this in my book and explain this well in my book, that this not a risk that we are concerned with based on what's been done for years now and the results of the studies that looked at.
And I think that's a huge piece. We're not saying there's no risk in cancer. We're saying when hormones are done right and they're done in the right ways, in other words, you said it, physiological dosing, so not going above what we already need to make, using bioidentical sources that are actually the same as our body, and balancing them in harmony. Very simple solution, right? But the thing is most providers, they think that something's FDA approved, and you're talking about progestins like medroxyprogesterone acetate. That's a big, long chemical that it looks similar, but it's not similar. And so I want to make sure that people understand that we can't just, and there's practitioners that are doing this, right? Not just going to the regular doctor, like we call them hormone doctors now, or functional medicine doctors. All the compounders that I know are very astute at this now and looking at it. So we're teaching pharmacists in the compounding labs, and we're teaching providers now these principles that have been used for years, and we're getting good results. And what I heard you say is it's not so much is if we do it right, we've shown over the years that there isn't any increased risk.
Correct.
I think that's huge around this space, because there's been a lot of stigmatization around, well, you're using this hormone, not this hormone, but it's really, they blanketed it on everything. They're saying all hormones are bad and only in these cases. And it's all about that fear, right? That fear-based system, where if we're looking at those modernized studies and the new interpretations of those old studies, it's actually included in this whole component of risk. So thank you for bringing that up.
Drug manufacturers' advantage if they can lump everything together, because then what you do looks just as bad as what they do. Because they just go, estrogen causes increased risk. No, you got to identify it. But estrogen, I want to talk about that a little bit more about cancer risk. You can go a step further than what we've already said. Balance the hormones and check cortisol and keep it physiological. You can actually look at what initiates the cancer. There are certain metabolites, they're called the catechol-estrogens, that can damage the DNA, and that's how estrogen initiates hormonal cancers. A very small percentage of any estrogen a woman's ever produced goes to those metabolites. Now, our DNA is damaged all the time. All the toxins we have in our environment and everything else. And our immune system repairs damaged DNA so it doesn't become cancerous. Well, as far as a hormonal scene, there's two things. There are ways to steer your estrogens more toward the safe metabolites. That's what iodine does. Iodine's protective against breast cancer. Iodine's good for women. In fact, women concentrate iodine in a second place other than the thyroid, like we all do. It's in the breast tissue. Women concentrate iodine in the breast tissue. Why? Because it's protective. A lot of my patients over 50, female patients over 50, takes a small amount of iodine as a protective thing. But there's other things you can do nutritionally. There's antioxidants like resveratrol and N-acetylcysteine that have been shown to steer toward the safe metabolites. You make sure you're methylating. I have a whole presentation on safe estrogen metabolism. So there's it's in my book. It's going to be in my new book for patients. Here's how you protect yourself. So even if a patient has what they feel is risk factors, they smoke for a lot of years and they've got family members that have it, they're overweight, etc. There's still things you can do nutritionally and lifestyle wise to reduce those metabolites that initiate cancer.
Well, thanks for bringing that up, because I think a lot of people say, well, my hormones are wrong, fix them and everything else is good. But we can balance hormones. And when we say balance, like some people don't want to go the restoration route where we're giving bioidentical hormones. So I talk to them about lifestyle. I talk about like changing your diet and lifestyle habits to help with those things, because we can help with the hormonal imbalances of the hot flashes and the things that are going on if we do some lifestyle things. So again, diet and lifestyle is important for everything, including hormone balancing. And that's really important. And you did touch on this, which is really important, because when we talk about cancer risks, especially with estrogens, the proliferative hormone, because now I'm doing a lot of DNA testing on my patients, so I can see the ways that which we're metabolizing these hormones, and then using testing like Dutch testing and things like that, we can actually see in real time the amounts of these different estrogens that are metabolized towards, let's call them healthy versus the not so healthy versions. And so that's really important as well. If you're going to do this right, I always suggest, well, let's look at how your body works and let's feed those nutrients and those things. And then when we get you on the hormones, if you really want to look and make sure that we're doing this right, we can also look there and see how you're metabolizing them down the field. So I think those are really good points that we've made for people.
Well, I agree with you 100% on the lifestyle. I've actually evolved to the point now where when a patient first contacts me, a potential patient, about doing a consultation, and I have them fill out the health questionnaire, I took a sheet that I used to give on lifestyle. There's just some basic lifestyle principles that are good for your overall health. Well, now I give it to them with the health questionnaire and say, rate how you do the following, 0 to 10. How good are you at this? And so we start the discussion with lifestyle. We start our consultation with lifestyle discussion. And why? Because it's not just I want you in good health overall. This is going to affect symptoms that we're going to try to alleviate with hormones, but it's not all hormones.
I love this. And this is why, the whole concept of tell them what they want, give them what they need, right? And so my men's and women's my programs that we're launching nationwide now is we talk about diet and lifestyle as a key pillar to their health, because we can, it's just like with the supplement world. I could give someone 12 supplements, but if they're not working on their stress and they're not working on their lifestyle and their diet and their food choices, then all the supplementation and all the hormone balancing in the world won't really actually get them to the outcome that they're looking for. And so I'm glad that you're using this, like I'm using this, in the forefront of the treatment protocol to say, guys, diet and lifestyle is critical to someone's overall health and well-being. And because the hormones aren't just another pill for the ill, right? It's part of the equation. So I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Can't just pop the pill.
And the cruciferous vegetables and all the things we could be eating, because if you can't eat it, you supplement with it. So we start with food first. There's so many good things in there, guys. We can make this work in a really good place.
When you change somebody's diet like that, isn't it amazing how they can't describe why, but they just, in a month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, they feel better.
Well, that's the key. And then they come back in those 6 weeks. And I was like, guess what? That's how long it takes biochemistry to take over. It's these systems, and it's the adage of food is medicine. It's food is medicine. Food is medicine. Lifestyle. We call it lifestyle medicine now, because changing your lifestyle to healthier ways and food is the biggest changes we can make. And those are the free and low cost options.
Yeah. You made me think of a patient I've dealt with recently, just talked to this last week. She was having memory issues and she wanted a pill for it. I said, well, there are some nutritional supplements, but diet plays a lot. So she was eating too much inflammatory foods. Could do a little bit better in the fat ratio. But basically I said, look, I want you to get a couple blueberries and a half a cup of walnuts every day into your system.
Mm-hmm.
And she's amazed how the blueberry and walnut, we haven't got her on a nutritional supplement. She's already improved so much by cleaning up her diet and getting the inflammation under control. And I go, blueberries and walnut. Who would have thought of that 20 years ago, right?
I love it. It's what I've teached for a long time, is wellness made simple. Like, I'm starting to work through this where if you do the diet and lifestyle changes, then come back to me and we'll work on you more, right? It's like, and I love where you put in blueberries and walnuts, because they're super healthy, good fats, great for the brain. In fact, if you look at a walnut, it looks like a brain.
Mm-hmm.
So it's literally good brain food. Like, how cool is nature? And yes, blueberries, the dark colored fruit berry, especially low glycemic index berries. If I had to be stranded on an island and I could only eat two things, those would probably be the two things I would put in there. Blueberries are so good for you guys.
Well, yeah, because they both go well with the fish you're going to catch on the island to survive.
Right. It's like everyone says, like, what's the number one food? I used to say like black raspberries, but I'm like, say just blueberries, the dark colored fruit. is so good for you. There's so much phytonutrient density in that. And it's like a cup of blueberries and some walnuts. And look what you got. Like, pretty cheap, pretty good alternative, and it's good for you. And so
we have one dog that has arthritis pretty bad. He gets blueberries in his food every morning.
my wife is a newly certified holistic pet health coach, and she cooked all of our dogs' food. And to see the transformation of food as medicine, that kind of thing is like getting them off all the commercially available processed stuff. Just like a patient, like my Clean 14 program is just that. In 14 days, clean up your diet and see how you feel. Like it's so simple, right? But we're moving towards all these complex things. And yet we're talking estrogen, we're talking hormone balancing, and there's always things we can do with diet and lifestyle. It's just always there. Because most people that are out of balance there. So it's beautiful that we're using this as a tool for the forefront and the pillar. Like I said, the pillar of diet, the pillar of lifestyle. And then we target the supplementation and we target the labs to get the hormones balanced rather than just hitting the balance with the hormones. And I've seen functional doctors just hit the hormones. And I've talked to people and say, have they addressed your stress? Have they addressed your lifestyle? Well, how's your food? And they're like, no, they're just giving me hormones and I don't feel good. Or that the doctor is giving, and it's not our fault, right, Jim? Like, we're not classically trained here. Like, this is something you have to seek out and do it right, which is talking about your new book, right? The book you're writing, which is more geared towards the client now, the patient, because you feel compelled to get it to the patient level so we can educate the providers as well and educate patients in that space. So talk to me a little bit about the book and what's happening with that.
Well, the motivation was the fact that my book I wrote for practitioners have been out 10 years now. And I still have people come into me that have not been offered or know anything about the options they have about bioidentical hormones. Or they've heard about it from a friend, but when they ask their doctor, he said, no, I don't do that. So I'm going like, okay, we can't depend upon the physicians because some of them are just too busy and too locked in their ways that they're going to learn something new. Okay. Or they're just, following the protocol, the drug manufacturers, and they're not going to go outside that box. So I thought, all right, let's educate the patients. And what's the best way to do that? Get a book out there. Because I'm not going to travel all over the United States lecturing I'm married now. I will travel again. I told my wife, people are going to ask me to speak if I write a book. And she said, okay, I'll go to the nice cities with you. But, yeah, so I'm going to put it out in a way that explains the hormones better than any over-the-counter hormone book I've seen. We're going to talk about some of the things we've talked about now, but I mean, I want patients don't have to know the science, but they've got to know of it. In other words, they've got to know too much hormone can look like too little hormone. And basically why. So I'm going to talk a little about tachyphylaxis or downregulation of receptors. Do they need to know that? No, but I think a lot of people want to understand the why. What they need to know is, look, if you give too much estrogen, it can look like too little because the brain's going to downregulate estrogen receptors. It's not going to work. If you give too much progesterone, it's going to look like too little estrogen and too low progesterone because the excess progesterone, you downregulate estrogen receptors, which make progesterone receptors. So we'll put that in simple terms as possible, but bottom line, I'm going to say bottom line, what you need to know, too much progesterone looks like too little progesterone and estrogen. So if they don't take any of the how away, they can take away what happens and learn that you have to have, patient has to have some control of what's going on. And they can't, you don't know if you've never worked with a doctor before, if they really know bioidentical hormones and physiological. Kind of, going back to physiological, how many doctors know how much estrogen a woman produces in her prime? How many doctors know how much testosterone a guy produces in his prime? If I have to educate the doctors on anything, I need to educate them on that. But as far as patients go, we need to educate them on the whole picture. And so there's going to be the chapter on thyroid could be a book in itself. Okay. Cause it's the way we take care of thyroid. First of all, the way we test thyroid is horrible. It's the most inadequate testing for any endocrine disorder there is. Number two, the way we treat it is very poor. So we could do so much better, but I'm going to try to get patients an understanding. Here's what can go wrong with thyroid. Here's how it's tested. Here's how you should fix it. Again, starting with nutrition and lifestyle, because cortisol messes up thyroid so much. But then the chapter on adrenal dysfunction, which I'm in the process of rewriting right now. I wrote it once, but then I got something on my computer called BitLock, and it destroyed my hard drive. I hadn't saved it yet. So, but, that's going to be a long chapter because there's so much to go into as far as lifestyle. It's not just, hey, here's what the symptoms are. Here's how you assess it. I think treatment and the variations, as far as choices of lifestyle adaptations and how they work for each individual. I mean, there's a lot to go into there. So, I think this is going to be the two fattest chapters in the book, thyroid and adrenals.
Yeah, adrenals are huge. It's one of my, I'm a big, I guess I've been a student of the word stress for my whole life. And so I've really, that's really where my specialty is working on adrenal balancing and restoration and really looking at the stress response system, because I think it's the key piece to the downstream effects of everything.
Yeah, it's the master control of endocrine interactions. But so let me talk a little bit about it, and then maybe you could share a little bit about what you're doing for it. Okay, things people need to know. The effects of stress on your adrenal glands are cumulative and additive. So if you're 52 years old, it's 50 years of stress. If you had stresses as a child, they still are affecting your adrenal health. Also the fact that some people, quote unquote, manage their stress well. I have a patient I'm working with right now. She has a high stress job, but she says, but I manage it well. I said, well, mentally you're doing fine, but trust me, your adrenals are still stressed. I mean, she's still got the symptoms because mentally she's doing okay. She's good outlook, but you got to take care of your adrenals. You can't just stress them forever and not do something. If you've not done anything nutritionally, then you've drained some of the nutritional that you need to support good adrenal function. So I think people need to look at cortisol more often. I do a 4-point saliva cortisol on every patient. I never fail to do it because, gosh, it's a very high percentage of people that have adrenal issues to some degree. Not terrible, but to some degree. And the lifestyle things that you're going to talk about, I don't care if you got adrenal dysfunction or not. They're beneficial, period, right? Is there anything are you going to harm anybody? No. So what do you do, Josh, for?
Well, it's people, when you talk 4-point cortisol. So when we have a pattern of cortisol, right? We know this now. Like, we don't just so getting one shot in the morning or in the evening of your cortisol levels is not representative of your diurnal or your pattern. So we know that we have to take it in a bunch of times. We know that it correlates well in saliva. So you spit in the tube 4 to 6 times a day and you can see your levels. And it's a representation. I call it like a snapshot. And like you said, I agree with you. When we have degrees of adrenal dysfunction, then when there's different levels of that, where it's really high, it's sometimes over the curve, sometimes it's flatline, sometimes it's just dysregulated. I'm in the same boat. I love testing and seeing it. And I also love showing people that the body and the mind have a beautiful connection with each other. So our perception of stress, like you said, of managing it, is a key piece. So I use heart rate variability training. I do heart math. I have big stress response system, feeding the adrenals with the right nutrients, getting the nutrient balancing. I love adaptogens. I love mushroom blends. These are things that are really important for people. And yes, it is the smoking gun. If we're going to talk about the root cause of a lot of dysfunction, we talk a lot about inflammation in the body. But this word stress, we know that our minds, it's not the stressor, it's our perception of that creates the cascading effects. We know that there's 1,400 chemical reactions that go on when the mind perceives a stressful event. But I tell people, it's like when you're doing yard work in your yard and you see a garden hose, but you perceive it as a snake, very different in your body.
Yeah.
So it's just the thought. So we know that our mind can make us sick, but we also know that our mind can make us well. This is why I love Joe Dispenza's work right now. And I'm a big fan of meditation and doing mindfulness work. We do it in our store. Anything we can do to help that stress response system getting out of fight or flight and back into this restful state. 70 to 80% of our day is in fight or flight. When we were in the caves around a fire, it was the opposite. It was 20% of the time. So we're in fight or flight longer. And like you said, it's cumulative. So if you've been in a stressful state, it's going to take time to back you through that and get you into the restful state. So it didn't take you overnight to get there. We teach people how to understand that this is the thing we can do. But again, you talked about the physiology of food as medicine in about 6 weeks. Well, the same thing can happen when I treat someone in our stress and well-being program, and we teach them these short techniques that they can do 5 minutes a day, 2 to 3 times a day. In 6 weeks, we can change that balance. And so lifestyle is stress response. So how do we manage our stress is a huge, huge piece in my transformation, which is why I teach it to others.
Yeah, I agree totally. I think I go on my instructions whenever we're talking about a lifestyle, and I give them examples. A lifestyle technique I call them compensation techniques. Compensating for your stress. I tell them, look, I had one guy one time say, I go out, I ride my bicycle to relax. I said, well, how often do you do that? He said, I get out every 2 or 3 weekends. I said, you're stressed every day you go to work. That's what, 5-6 days a week, and you're going to ride the bicycle once every 3 weeks? No, you need to do a daily compensation technique. But I always finish this first time we're on pitching in capital letters for at least 8 weeks. I don't want them to draw any conclusions of whether it's helping or not till we're out there 6 weeks. Preferably 8. Okay. So
I agree with that.
And then wholeheartedly, when you do your saliva test to measure your cortisol, you want to do it on an average day of stress. In other words, if you're stressed Monday through Friday at your job, you don't spit on Saturday. You don't spit on Sunday. For some people, that's more relaxing, kind of more stressful because a family comes over for dinner. You want to try to pick an average day of stress, even if it means the inconvenience of going to the bathroom at work and collecting saliva. It's important to me. The other thing that I point out to patients or practitioners, I don't think they're aware of, is that when a person's been stressed repeatedly over time, one of those cumulative effects is that the message goes down the brain, down the HPA axis, hippocampus, pituitary, adrenal. So they call it the HPA axis. That HPA axis, after a while, gets fired up too often, it becomes more sensitive. In other words, the brain becomes more sensitive to stress. So what used to be a mild stressor is now a moderate stressor. So I tell people, your adrenals should be hearing, you're stressed. And they're hearing, you're stressed. And that's where adaptogens come in. They help blunt that message going down. And then your lifestyle technique, changing your perception of stress, that's where you work. And that's why that takes time. You can't do that overnight, unfortunately. But I think it's important for people to realize, because I've had patients. I had one patient not too long ago. She's 64, retired, I think about 8-10 months before we did the consultation. She said, Jim, it's not stressed. I'm not stressed anymore. I'm retired. Well, it said right on her form, now retired after 8 to 10 years of pure hell. I said, I'm not treating retirement. I'm treating those 8 to 10 years of pure hell that you are still going to have the effects of, because you haven't done anything to reverse those effects. And that's one of the most important things for patients to understand. You need to work on reversing the effects of stress on your adrenals, get your adrenal function back to what it should be. And that's lifestyle and nutrition.
I love that. And that's the key here, guys, is we can give you all the supplements and the hormones, but if you're not working on yourself and doing the things you need to do, I love bookmarking my morning and my evening. First hour in the morning and the first hour in the day are my self-care days. That's my self-care time. And I bookmark it so I can do my stress management. I can take care of myself. And I put it in, I actually, Jim, I teach this to the pharmacists because I've been teaching wellness in pharmacy for a while now. And the people that mentor with me and are in my masterminds, I tell them to put it in their work calendar. Because if they're teaching other people wellness, they've got to do themselves first. And when I put it in my work calendar, it automatically gives me permission to do what I need to do for my work. And so those are really nice little hacks and cheats that I give.
I like that. Put your personal time in your work calendar. I like that idea. I got people who should be doing that.
Put your self-care in your work calendar. If you're into health and watching other people how to be health and wellness, well, you've got to do you. And that's that's part of your work, right? Your work is to walk the walk, talk the talk, and get these things under control. Like I said, none of these hormonal cascades are ever going to be fixed or restored without your part in it. And so I'm glad that we've hit this on many levels. How do pharmacists and healthcare professionals who want to integrate hormone health into their practice, what do you think are the first steps they should be taking?
Read my book.
Secondly,
I would say you want to have somebody that's already doing this and have done this for a while to help you. Mm-hmm. So if I have a compounding pharmacist that's new to this, I'm going like, you need to find somebody who you can ask questions of now and then. Okay. You need to have somebody with experience that you can tackle most patients and do fine, but you're going to have a patient come up that you just don't understand what's going on. So, I suggest like virtual meetings with other people. They don't have to be somebody you can, drive over and visit. Virtual meetings are so great now. We have a group of consultants that do what I do, what you do. We meet on a weekly basis virtually, and we discuss case studies, the weather, new nutritional supplements that people are using, just all kinds of weird things. As far as
I love
the pages, because I don't care how many years you've been doing this. I've been doing this over 40 years right now, and they presented a patient this past week. I hadn't seen anything like. Lady was born with 2 uteruses.
And that's key, right? It's key because we're all bio-individual, right? This is where personalized medicine is coming from. This is why we test. We look at the hormones, we look at the genetics, we look at the bio-individual around nutrigenomics and things like that. That's why I'm so excited about this golden age we're in, because these tests aren't thousands of dollars anymore. We can test these things at a reasonable time, reasonable price points, and get people hyper personalized. I love that. And this is why I've been working with pharmacists in wellness and in functional and all these places, is because the best of the best have a coach. Michael Jordan was probably the best basketball player in the world. He had lots of coaches. So we need to make sure that we are learning from people that have been there and have experience, not just trying to DIY the whole thing, because we can get the books, right? We can understand and read the books, but that's exactly what I did. I said, all right, I need to find a mentor. I need to find a coach because I've read this book, but now I need to get, that's how you get there quicker, faster, and with less resources is when you have a group, you have a tribe, you have people you can learn from. So thank you for bringing that up.
I tell practitioners, look, pay another practitioner if you have to do this with you on your first few patients. Whether you sit on a virtual meeting or go over your notes afterwards and, comment on your recommendations. However, have somebody else for a while. I mean, if I'm teaching a pharmacist how to do a consultation, for example, and how to start this out, I say, you just need to sit in a few of my consultations for a while. And I'll get the patient permission. And that's how I talk pharmacists. And I think doctors should do the same thing. And the same thing with functional medicine. You don't have to pay thousands of dollars and go to these classes. There's less expensive ways. Do you know Lauren Castle?
Yeah, we're good friends.
Yeah. She has that program now for functional medicine for pharmacists. It's great.
I think in this day and age, this is why I created the RX to Wellness Accelerator program that we put hundreds of pharmacists through now. Is you don't have to go back to school to learn the basics of what you need to do to be successful. If you have a tribe, if you have the right people teaching you, and if you're learning from others that have done it, right? That's why Lauren, and she's got the Functional Medicine Pharmacists Alliance, the Beyond the Pills collective that I've created. Like, these are places where, none of us got this in traditional school, but we went out and learned it. We did all the hard work. And now we're here to teach others how to do it quicker, faster, and with less effort and less time, because we have AI. We have all these tools now that we can use. And when you're learning with peers alongside others, you actually learn faster and quicker. We've known this in the Cleveland clinics. We know this in functional medicine from a patient perspective. When you learn from your peers, you actually learn better. So
you might retain that learning better because you're less stressed because you're not on your own.
Well, and I have a firm belief that when you do it alongside of people that are also going through it, this is why group-based programs are so important. Because if you're going through, rather than just one-on-one, if you're going through it with a group, then you get to experience it with each other. It's part of the community we have, right? Part of the community that we have. If you're going through a metabolic reset program that we have, or the stress and well-being program, and you're meeting as a group and you're experiencing, somebody's experience is going to be same but different than yours, and you go through the whole process. So it's the studies have shown this, and it's really important. So I'm glad that we're bringing this stuff up. Find your mentor, find your tribe.
Physicians and nurses that take advantage of your accelerator program?
That's the next step. Because I think
that's what we need now, because you guys are both doing great jobs of educating pharmacists. But I'm going, why couldn't we do this for physicians? That's what I did for years. I was a pharmacist and I educate physicians.
That's the evolution of medicine, is when we're talking lifestyle medicine and we're talking food is medicine, and we're looking at wellness made simple, like functional made simple. Well, primary care physicians and pharmacists are at the front lines here. And so my adaptation of my accelerator program is moving in that direction, so we can train these providers to put food and lifestyle at the forefront of their education to their patients. Because you and I both know this, awareness is the first step. This is why you're writing your book. This is why I do the podcast, because awareness is the first step to moving people in the right direction, right? If they didn't hear this, then they wouldn't be aware of it. Once you're aware of it, you can't be unaware of it. You just can choose what you do with it. And so this has been a really awesome conversation. Get his book if you're a practitioner. We'll happily have another podcast when the book comes out for patients, because I want people to understand how they can do this not only by themselves. But be aware of these are the things, like these simple things, what is one thing that we touched on today that would give them just one piece of advice as listeners to do the work? If they're thinking or interested about hormone balancing, what is the one thing? We've talked about lifestyle, we talked about these things, but what are the things that we can do to talk to listeners to empower them today?
Boy, that's hard to put in one short little thing, but basically they need to educate themselves, and they need to find the knowledgeable practitioner to work with. And what I've told most patients I've worked with, is you need to find a compounding pharmacist, because I think compounding pharmacists have been the best at getting educated themselves and probably as knowledgeable as anybody on this.
Well, I thank you, because those of us that are compounding these bioidentical hormones, because they're compounded medications, they're not FDA approved, which means we have to go into the lab and we make them, right? These bioidenticals that we've been doing for a very long time. I'm really excited because I'm working on some new and novel dose deliveries that I want to talk to you a little bit about at some point. But
yeah, we're here about that.
Yeah, we're doing some really cool stuff. Like, hormones haven't been the delivery systems are getting more bioavailable, and we're doing some really cool stuff. I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about that. But the compounding pharmacists that have been compounding these bioidenticals for a very long time, they have a good depth of knowledge and understanding about this. So if you are a patient who are looking to get educated, a lot of these, like you and I both have been teaching pharmacists, and Lauren and all these people, like, they're starting to do these consultations to talk to people about, is it right for them, what they could be doing, what are the dosage forms, what are the costs involved, what doctors can I use, because they're already seeing the physicians that are doing it and prescribing them. So then you have a referral network to get the prescriptions, to get them done right, and to do it restoratively, the right way, like you said, the right dose, restoring in balance, and making sure that we're doing the lifestyle and nutritional balancing as well. Jim, this has been an amazing episode. I'm so glad that I was able to talk with you a little bit about your history and everything going on. I can't wait to see this new book come to fruition for you. Thank you so much for all you've done over the decades for not only pharmacy, but for patients and their healthcare, especially as it relates to these things called hormone balancing.
Well, thank you, Josh. I had a good time. This is great.
Awesome. All right, guys, this is a wrap. Until next time, stay well. Thanks for joining me today on Beyond the Pills. If our mission to de-prescribe 10 million unnecessary medications resonates with you, share this episode, subscribe, and leave a review. Whether you're a practitioner or someone ready to reclaim your health, visit rx2wellness.com for free resources to begin your journey. Together, let's go beyond the pills and co-create a world of vibrant health and true healing. Until next time, live better and stay well.